Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. On this podcast, Laura
and Shelby, both board-certified nurse coaches, show you how to make as much money as you want in private practice as a nurse coach.
All right, guys, welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. Today is Shelby and Laura both recording and bringing you an awesome episode titled Imperfect Self-Care is Still Self-Care. This is going to be an episode all about how to be a B- at your self-care so that you can enjoy it, so that it has the intended effect on your life, which is improving your physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. And if you're a perfectionist around self-care, it's an oxymoron. It defeats the purpose.
Yeah, I think that this is a lot of our community struggles with perfectionism. And this is another way where, like, another avenue, it gets to pop up. Your perfectionism personality gets to pop up and rear its ugly head. I also think too, and this isn't something that I mentioned in the notes, but I also think too that, like, if we're not aware of this, then it can also show up in how we support our clients as well. So there's a big part of coaching to where we have to, like, trust the process, right? Of trust into what is unfolding, even if we don't have all the answers, even if we don't know where the conversation's going to go, or even if a client hired you to lose 10 pounds and now you're talking about religious deconstruction. Like, there is a part of the coaching dynamic where you're letting the client lead the conversation. And sometimes I can feel like we're going into left field a little bit, but we are trusting in the magic of what is unfolding and what is being created in this time together. I think that if we really have this perfectionism belief about ourselves, of like, or this black and white thinking, I see perfectionist tendencies here too, of like,
Right.
If I can't do it perfectly, then I'm not going to do it at all. Or if my client can't do it perfectly, then what? Like, are we leaving a lot of room for judgment, for like hyper perseverating over a client and like, am I doing a good job? Do I have the right exercises? Are they getting what they need out of this situation? I just think it can be kind of like a mind virus that shows up everywhere. And then we start then we have an agenda whenever we go in to client conversations, right? Like,
Yes.
we start to try to guide and steer but wait, remember that original goal you said 6 weeks ago? Like, what about that? Like, I don't know. Am I making sense? That was a bit of a
Yes.
business.
Well, I think it's you added the layer of, okay, well, imperfect self-care is the name of the episode. We're talking about how important that is for the coach holistically, for you listening, how important that is for you. We're going to share about what that means to Shelby and I, but it also, like, bringing in how your ideas about self-care, your subconscious beliefs and thoughts, and what you have on rewind constantly around your own self-care will make you a specific kind of coach. And so it's even worth looking at as a coaching skill in and of itself, because you're right. There is the minute that you are certain that if somebody just journaled that their life would be better and they choose not to journal, then you haven't done a good job as a coach, because they're not doing the tool that you recommended.
Right. Yeah. And I think that this is where it can get, so that we have this exercise in our course of like how to create your offer, right? And it's, we identify the type of people that you like working with, what problems you can help them solve, and their desired outcome. And then we come up with steps on how to get from point A to point B. And nurse coaches we get pretty hung up on this because we are trained in, like, the client leads the journey, the client is in charge. So how can I prescribe, like, step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3 is this, step 4 is this? And I appreciate this so much about our community, but there's like two sides of the coin here of, like, we need to be able to describe what we do and how we help people, and also hold the potential that your method, your protocol, your system might go completely out the window depending on what's present for your client. And it's like this holding of both are true. Like, we don't have to choose one, but being able to talk about how you help people via email or via social media or when you're talking to someone in person is really, really helpful to contextualize what you do.
Right.
And also, if your client's like, Shelby, I'm going to burn all of my journals. I'm never going to do a journal exercise ever again. Like, maybe don't die on that hill with them, throw it out.
Yeah.
Let it go. Let it go. See what else is here and release your grip on it.
Yeah. I feel like I'm going to qualify the importance of this episode through some personal stories about self-care and what I thought self-care should be. And I certainly thought that I should elevate my self-care game when I started being a professional nurse coach, because professional nurse coaches, let me tell you what they do. They always get enough sleep. They're never resentful. They're always doing their gratitude practice. They're journaling regularly. They're making their homemade meals. They meditate or do some kind of mindfulness daily, and they certainly move their body and probably a lot of other things. And that's what a professional nurse coach should be doing for self-care. When at that time, I was still working with my chronic illness. I was better, but not totally well. And for me at that time, my best self-care was a snack in my bed with a Netflix special on an afternoon for no particular reason at all, without guilt. Absolute best thing I could do for myself. Everything else would fall into line if I allowed myself that. And that, through coaching, was my number one self-care practice. It's like when it's time to do that, everything got moved. I did that. After I did that, it was really easy to like maybe do a mindfulness or go for a hike outside. But if I tried to do the mindfulness and the hike outside before I sat and rotted in my bed for 30 minutes to 3 days, it wasn't going to happen. And so that was like my first introduction to imperfect self-care. It was a very professional coach. I'm sorry, a very successful coach who gave me that framework. She's like, you do pretend flu days once a month. You can't do this work without pretend flu days. Like either it's a full day or half day, and I just eat in bed and watch Netflix. And she was like, I don't know, like a $600,000 or $700,000 coach that I'd had a session with. And I was like, oh, because that was not what had been modeled to me. I hadn't seen that. Mm-hmm. And then my first business coach would say something similar. And I'm like, so all the fancy, successful coaches, they have imperfect self-care and it seems to really work for them. And then the world opened up. Like the judgment was gone. It was easier to do all the things. And if I chose to do some more higher quality self-care activities, fucking fabulous. But I got relief in the meantime. I got relief with my imperfect ways of caring for myself, of ways of regulating myself. And I know, because I talked to you guys, I know that you have the nurse coach self-care projection in your brain that you're trying to live up to. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, I think what's standing out for me as I hear you reflect on this is that your relationship with self-care before was like that you've had to earn the more imperfect version of self-care. Of like, I have to do the gold standards that I can like be down here unapologetically. And I think that's like I don't really have the words for this, but it's probably tied into productivity somehow. Of like the phrase you've been saying a lot this year is like, it's productive to be restful. I think also too of like what is self-care, right? Of like in mainstream media, we're sold like spa days and polar plunges and blah, 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 blah. Like, what does it sauna, like
mornings and sun gazing and other strange things I won't say.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that what you are bringing to the table here, Laura, is really special. Of like, self-care can be a spectrum of things, and sometimes it's rotting in the bed watching like Real Housewives, eating Cheez-Its. And sometimes, like for me, I was really good at spa day self-care, especially before I had kids. Like I was treat yourself, no problems. But like that is such a shallow definition of self-care. And over the past 5 years or 7 years or so, like self-care for me was like the deep, gross, icky work of like breaking generational trauma and learning to regulate my nervous system and feel my feelings. Like those are my forms of self-care. And now luckily it's a little less intense, but for probably 2 years, like I felt very in the mud. Like self-care was not fun for me. Like it was painful,
Yeah.
hard, and I cried a lot, and I was very much in the weeds for a long time. But through that, now, like self-care was yesterday, like blew off the last thing on my to-do list to go have dinner with friends. And like I now self-care is a little bit fluffier and more silver linings, but it's so personal. It's so personal
Right.
to you. And so I know I just wanted to touch that bubble of like it doesn't have to be like the who's the guy? The Huberman Labs perfect morning routine
Right.
for it to qualify as self-care.
As self-care.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that at different stages and realize during startup phase, I had a 2 and a 3-year-old and was battling chronic illness and had a husband that was gone. That is not my reality now. And so my self-care now is time with my animals and it's time outside. And honestly, self-care can be coming into my office on a weekend and doing something I want to do, not something that's actually on my ClickUp list to do. It's like,
Yeah.
gonna do a thing that's creative and fun because I have an impulse and like following that impulse and allowing myself to take that impulse in the moment and do exactly what I want to do. That can be self-care for me.
Mm-hmm.
And self-care for me is going to bar class or going to CrossFit, going to a workout class 3 days a week is something I get to do. I look forward to do. Could not have been on my self-care list 5 years ago. Right. So
Yeah.
like, I want you guys to really, as you're listening to this, realize well, whatever that you're doing right now, that you can consider caring for you, caring for your needs, like listening to your body, that is self-care. It is not a list that you choose from. And there's not gold standard and bronze standard, and you're a bad self-care person if you're choosing bronze. It's what you need this week, what you need this month, unapologetically, with room for it to grow and change.
I think what you're, describing of like there's no gold standard, there's no bronze standard, you don't get extra credit for doing X, Y, and Z. It that like feels like actual true intuitive self-care of like today I need this and listening. And like I think actually where the bonus points lie is like, can you honor this need, this nudge with the least amount of guilt as possible? Like that's where the bonus points come in. And I think that it's a tricky line, right? Of like, is it true self-care or is it avoidance? Is it self-care or is it resistance? And those are questions that can be helpful to like run through with your coach as well. But like the question often the thing I hear a lot around self-care as well is, well, I haven't been able to meditate in 7 days, or I haven't been to the gym in 6 days. And people get all bent out of shape over it of like, I haven't been able to check the box. I haven't been able to do the thing. I haven't been able to take care of myself. And then there's like this spiral that happens that's pretty aggressive. And it's like, okay, is that actually self-care or is that a fragile coping mechanism too? Of
Right.
if you miss it for a few days, are you going to be okay? Like the goal of self-care is to, I don't know, like make life more sustainable, like be able to show up in the world. And if we miss, our Monday morning meditation, are we going to be okay for the rest of the week? Because hopefully the answer is yes, right? So I don't really know what my point in sharing that was, other than I just want people to know about it.
Yeah. I mean, intuitive self-care is honoring what's true for you in the moment and then enjoying whatever you choose without guilt. And for those of you who are working in your business right now where it's really muddy because you're kind of tired and you're not sure, is this a push through moment or is this a self-care moment? And if you're really uncertain, set an alarm for 20 minutes. Set an alarm for 20 minutes and do whatever you want to do for 20 minutes and see how you feel then. And if you're still really tired, then keep resting. And if you feel a little bit better, then maybe get back at it. Even when you hear my voice, like the way that my voice just said that, you can see that either one's okay and it's just not that big of a fucking deal. Right? It's like, oh, all right, I'm going to just set my alarm for 20 minutes. I'm going to scroll on the couch and then I'm going to see how I feel. And maybe I'll jump up and make some tea and go back to work. Or maybe I'll call it quits for the day and I won't because I'm incredibly tired. either one's okay. It's really just one day. That would be the self-care voice. That's not appropriate every time you sit down to connect and invite. If you're noticing that every time you sit down to connect and invite or do something difficult in your business, that all of a sudden you're thinking, I should do some self-care. That's probably resistance. You're going to need to learn to understand this for yourself and create your own framework and structure that works for you so that you know what's intuitive for you and what your patterns are. We have lots of clients whose patterns are, I'm going to go to the gym every day, 7 days a week, no matter what. That's their self-care, and they rely very heavily on it. That's okay too. If it works, it's not okay if you miss it and then you self-flagellate all day, then I wouldn't call that self-care. Right? I would call it a fragile coping mechanism.
Right. It's my mind is just like blazing with like 400 different stories. And I also too, I hope that if like you're a client of ours right now, that we can help you tap into this inner voice that again is just like such a great tool, because if we're tapped in to the internal voice and not tapped into the shoulds or the external pressure or the shame and the guilt that comes along sometimes with self-care and not being enough or not doing enough or not doing enough for my business or whatever the phrase circling in your mind right now is, like that inner voice is almost never wrong, and like if we need to take 20 minutes to scroll on the couch and like tune out and check out and then tap back in and be like, all right, what's the next move here is actually trying to happen here, like that will serve you forever, not just in business, but in your whole life. Learning to take a pause and recalibrate a little bit or go stand outside and breathe fresh air for a few moments. Again, I think it speaks to that perfectionist mindset of like, well, if I can't do it completely right, then I just have to check out. I just have to go get drunk on a Wednesday off margaritas with my friends at the Mexican restaurant. Might as well just like completely wash out this day.
Right.
And we have to break that pattern if you want to like keep your sanity in this role.
Because self-care is like a form of regulation. Regulation without guilt is way better than regulation with guilt.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you guys?
Right. My somatic practitioner that I've worked with for years, she's like, if we know the intention behind it of like, I'm feeling really frustrated that my mic quit working or that the camera, whatever, pick a tech faux pas that we've experienced this week. I'm feeling frustrated, so I'm going to leave my office. I'm going to leave all the lights and the camera and my laptop, and I'm going to go sit downstairs and I'm going to just like stare at the wall for 15 minutes. She's like, some could say that that's dissociating, but the fact that you're aware of it, that you have an intention behind it, that there's some structure around it is actually really helpful for your nervous system. And then you get to go do it and be like, yeah, I checked the box. I did the thing. I'm feeling like I have a little bit more space between me and all of this bullshit going on. She also gives the example. She's like, scrolling on social media is not the worst thing ever. But it's like the mindless scrolling, the like, I sat down 4 hours ago and I don't know where the time went scrolling. That is like the opposite side of the coin here. And it
depends on your feed too. We have several social media channels. And so sometimes I'll scroll with our different social media challenges because they're different.
Yeah.
But mine right now is lots of funny videos. And Evan will always say, because I'll go inside for lunch and I'll usually eat on the couch. And if no one's home, which is nice, then I'll scroll for like 15 minutes or 20 minutes when I'm eating my lunch. And I'll be dying. Like I'm laughing so loud. I'm sending it to Shelby or my sister or friends. And that is that's wonderful. Like I have eaten, I have sat and I have laughed, belly laughed, and I am ready to come back in the office and start my day. Like that's fantastic. But if your feed is full of political things right now, or like, I'm not sure when this is going to go live, but if it depends on your feed too. So like, make sure that it has its intended effects. But here's the thing. You can always invite new and perceived improved avenues of self-care, but not at the expense of your peace. get some peace, and then decide to change your self-care or to upgrade your self-care. But I mean, self-care can be a worry session or a bitch session. It can be calling a friend saying, can I complain for 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Like, I want to complain about my husband, and I want to complain about my business, and I want to complain about my weight, and I want to complain about my outfit, and I want, like, just complaining for 15 minutes or writing down everything you're worried about. Like, you will feel better. And that is self-care. And so there's these unorthodox things that you're probably already doing that you could assign like some really valuable meaning to and like immediately feel like you're nailing it in the self-care department, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My favorite thing to do whenever I need like 5 minutes to vent is to call Laura or to call my friend, whatever friend of choice, honestly, for the particular problem. And I'm like, do you have 5 minutes? Like, can I just have 5 minutes where I just unload, and then I'll need 5 more minutes for a little bit of a pep talk, and then I can move on with my day. But yeah, it's all just like this deep acknowledgement of where you're at and what you need right now. So if you need to vent, you need to complain, all these things, maybe just try it out, see how it feels for a week. Test out a few different modalities. I saw this thing right before I came to your house, Laura, of a scream pillow. And it's a pillow that you literally, like a pocket-sized pillow that you can carry around to scream in. And it muffles your scream. And I was like, that is the most chaotic thing I have ever seen. And I think that I need one because, like, there are many times where I am visually screaming in my head over whatever current frustration it is. And if I just had a little pillow, I think that I could elevate that experience and just allow myself like the full release of my anger. I just don't want to scare my kids. You know, they can't hear me.
What if it flips or it doesn't work? Yeah. I like a few kind of unorthodox kind of ways that I consider self-care that's helpful for me, like organizing digitally. Like, I've had the same screensavers on my screens forever. And if I change my screensaver, like, I feel really good. Like, that feels good. Like, there's these little like low-hanging fruit things that we can do. Organizing your makeup drawer. I don't know, most of our listeners are women. I did this, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago on a whim. Took me about 20 minutes, got out the Windex, some paper towels, cleaned out the whole drawer, threw away old stuff. That's the gift that keeps giving. Every time I open that drawer, like, I am happier. So unsubscribing from emails that you don't really need, like cleaning up your inbox, going to inbox one. There's also these like self-care activities that are cumulative, that give you more over time, along with the regulating type of activities where you just need something in the moment to get your head above water. These are all like areas of way that we love ourselves and we care for ourselves and we prioritize ourselves. And so whatever way you choose to do it, if you can do it without guilt and you can do it consistently, you're killing it. You're doing a great job with self-care.
Yeah. I'm hoping that this episode just kind of like opens a new door in your brain for like what qualifies as self-care, or maybe even challenges how you define self-care a little bit.
Yeah.
Just open the lens, open your perspective. And to give yourself some freaking credit, man. Like, I know that if you're listening to this, you're juggling a lot. You probably have a very full life, and you don't need me or Laura being like, do a 40-minute polar plunge every morning. Like, that's not reasonable.
Not going to be it this week.
Not this week. Not this week. Yeah. I also want to just briefly mention, and this could probably be its own podcast episode in itself, of just how not selfish self-care is. By you taking the time, even the little fractions of moment at time, to care for yourself, it allows you to be a more regulated human being in the world, for your family, for your clients, for your husband, for your kids, all the things. Like, you are able to show up just as your true self more often, when I think we can take care of ourselves more regularly, more consistently, and be in the flex and the flow of whatever that means for that week and that day. I know that women have a lot of conditioning around this, of like that everybody else comes first. And I would just pose the question of like, what if you got to come first for 20 minutes every morning before you showed up for everybody else?
Yeah. I thank you for saying that. I forget how far I've come in that.
Mm.
And so self-care to Laura before, that was something that was ingrained in me. There's a lot of calculations that needed to happen in my brain.
Yeah, I think we also have a audience of listeners who are mostly women. A lot of you are moms, and then I think all of you are nurses. And those three things are like the trifecta of messing with your brain when it comes to self-care, because we are constantly asked to
Yeah.
and paid to put everybody else first, and
Yes.
it's reinforced. And so again, I'm proud that if that is where you are at, that you listened to this episode and maybe got a fresh set of glasses to see the self-care
Yeah.
through.
What a nice episode. Makes me want to go do something for myself.
I was like, yeah, I'm going to go eat lunch now and scroll funny memes. I'm catching myself, Laura. I know that, we collaborate with our social media manager to make our reels, but they're so funny. Like ones that I came up with weeks ago, I'm like, dang, you nailed it. That is hysterical.
I was showing everybody our reels, and my daughter goes, Mommy, do you videos on funny videos on Instagram? I was like, I do, sweetheart.
Yeah, we do. So I guess shameless plug. If you need a 5-minute dopamine boost, go check out either the Successful Nurse Coaches or Nurse Life Coach Academy and just giggle to yourself a little bit. We make very niche memes and reels over there for our people.
Raw dog one, Evan was concerned about. He was very, very concerned about that.
No, baby, it's funny. You just have to trust me. It's what all the kids are saying.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in today. We are so excited to have you in our community. We love hearing from you, and you guys don't miss the assignment. I get messages from you every week. So does Shelby, and we just appreciate it. And if this one landed and you're not bothering us, you're never bothering us, send us a private message. Let us know it landed. It makes us happy. It makes this podcast and all the time and energy and money we put into doing this podcast weekly, it makes it worth it when we hear from you guys.
Yeah.
So don't be shy.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, team. See you next week.